about every little mistake is going to cost marks. That's the opposite of learning to be anti-fragile.
I don't like this anymore. I thought he was going to blame the schools. Instead, he's blaming me as a parent. I thought he was going to tell me that the schools are doing it wrong. He's telling me I am doing it wrong as a parent. Nah.
Hi Shrikant.
Hi Naveen.
Did you know that our schools are teaching our children exactly the wrong thing, exactly the wrong approach to learning?
I knew it. I knew I wasn't wrong. I knew my teachers were wrong. I knew that I was born intelligent, but education ruined me.
Yeah. Except that you are not allowed to have such views unless you are able to explain what is wrong and what is the correct method. And that I will talk about in this episode.
I have him to explain, so I'm not going to attempt explaining. Naveen, explain.
So, the basic idea I want to talk about today is something called antifragile. It is a word coined by author, philosopher Nassim Taleb in a book of the same name, Antifragile.
That's Nassim Taleb.
Yeah.
Interesting name.
So, let's understand the basic thing about any system, right? And how it deals with failures. The thing that we most think about or worry about is that we want our systems to be robust.
True,
right?
true.
If every little failure, every little shock causes the system to break, then that is a fragile system.
Correct,
right?
correct.
What you want is something that is robust. So when a shock hits it, it doesn't, it just withstands the shocks.
Correct.
Shock.
You can't ride a bike if it is going to break at every pothole that it meets. Not in Pune, definitely.
In fact, robust isn't also as good.
Okay.
The word that is used for Bombay after every flood
Is resilient.
right?
Yes.
Resilient is that it springs back from shocks. But Taleb points out that one of the most important concepts in nature, anywhere, is more than robust or resilient. In fact, it is a very non-intuitive concept. It says that a system, there exist systems which actually grow stronger with every shock, with every failure.
Oh, like non-Newtonian fluids.
Yeah.
Physics background.
So actually that doesn't make sense initially when you first hear it, right? But think about it, that every time there is a minor failure, you learn from the failure, you change your systems, you change your processes, you add some new rules, and now you have a system that is better able to deal with that failure, right?
True.
Now there are some other small failure and you again adjust. So a system that keeps hitting different shocks, keep hitting different failures, and then learns from that. That it's an anti-fragile system. All of evolution in general and all of our biology in particular is based on this concept of anti-fragile, and that's why we have bodies which thrive under such
Adverse conditions.
Adverse conditions, yeah.
Very interesting. Can you point out to an example in evolution where antifragility can be observed, or probably an example in the body, as you said, where antifragility is observed?
Yeah. So let's take the example of our immune system.
Okay.
Every infection that comes into our body, our immune system first tries to fight it using the simple tools it has called the innate immune system.
Correct.
If that works, great. If that doesn't work, then our adaptive immune system takes over. We end up creating T cells and B cells, and basically we try various things until one particular attack works against this particular germ, and then we remember it. In case of chickenpox, we remember it for the rest of our life. That is why you get chickenpox only once in your life, right?
Correct.
In case of tetanus, we remember it for 10 years. That's why you have to take tetanus shots every 10 years, right?
Right. That reminds me, I need to go and get a tetanus shot.
But if you were to draw a curve, okay, you draw a curve where on the x-axis it is how many germs or how strong the attack on you was, right? And on the y-axis, how well you are doing now and in the future.
Right.
What you will notice is that initially, for some number of attacks, for weaker attacks, your body actually goes stronger with every attack because you are learning to deal with and destroy newer and newer types of germs, right?
Okay.
Of course, when the attack goes beyond a certain point, now your body is no longer able to learn from that, or deal with that and you will die or something bad will happen, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, after a while it goes negative.
Correct.
But the first part, where it goes positive for a while, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Ah.
Right? To take a different illustrative, interesting example, right? Our bones, the more you use your body and your bones, the stronger they grow. Because we have two kinds of cells in our bone cells in our body, right?
Right.
Osteoblasts and osteoclasts.
Okay.
One of them goes and removes cells in places where they are not needed.
Okay.
And in places where the bones have been exposed to stress, you go and create new cells, right?
Okay. To reinforce the
Right?
bone. Yeah.
So that is why people who run regularly will have stronger bones. Most interesting
I have
result,
weak bones.
Most interesting result of this is that astronauts who spend a month or more in the space station, they lose 1 to 2% of their bone density for every month they spend in space. Why? Wow. Because no gravity, their bones are not getting stressed, they are not getting, jerks and jams. That is why.
Interesting. This also means a lot of things for space travel, but we'll not go into that right now.
Yes.
Maybe a different video. Yeah. So, yeah. Interesting. So that's how the body's immune system and all of the body systems are, in a way, so to speak, anti-fragile. But from what you've described, it seems to be like there is fragile, there is robust, there is resilient, and then there is anti-fragile.
Correct. Yeah. So, and you want to be at anti-fragile, right?
Correct.
A lot of modern systems are trying to be robust.
Right.
As in just, they're trying to avoid failures entirely.
They're trying to absorb the shocks, and that's about it.
Well, actually, most of them aren't even trying to absorb shocks. They're trying to avoid shocks entirely, right?
Oh.
Think about it. As in, for a child, you spend way too much time trying to protect them from falling, protect them from going outside, protect them from, the mud on the ground and infections in the park.
You're making me feel bad as a parent, Naveen.
Yes, that's the whole point. Our schools, I mean, what did we say, right? That anti-fragile is when you are exposed to lots of little failures and lots of little shocks and you learn from them, you grow stronger. You don't want, to be exposed to a big shock because that will kill you, right? Remember
Correct.
the curve.
Small, yeah. Hormesis zone.
All of school is trying to teach student to be extremely careful with every problem, think 3 times and not make a single mistake, and every mistake you cut marks and make the student feel bad. Whereas in reality, what you want to be doing is let them experiment, let them make lots of mistakes and let them learn from their own mistakes. Instead, children become anxious about every little mistake is going to cost marks. That's the opposite of learning to be anti-fragile.
I don't like this anymore. I thought he was going to blame the schools. Instead, he's blaming me as a parent. I thought he was going to tell me that the schools are doing it wrong. He's telling me I am doing it wrong as a parent. Nah.
Yes. So I do believe that too much of modern parenting is trying to protect children from minor harms, whereas those minor harms are actually necessary to build stronger children. Right?
But kids, little kids, you need to protect them. You need to cuddle them.
No, you don't. Our little kids are extremely anti-fragile. They are very, very capable of learning. So there is, for example, an entire tribe, I don't know, somewhere, we'll find out later, but they have no concept of telling children to stay away from fire. Okay? They just
It's Sparta. You're thinking of Sparta, and it is
no,
extinct.
It's not Sparta. No, it is not Sparta. An actual tribe studied by anthropologists.
Okay.
And all they do is the children are allowed to do what they want with fire. Every once in a while, they burn their fingers a little bit. After that, they learn a lesson which is never forgotten, right? And their children are not dying at a higher rate of fire than our children.
Do you see me sweating? The very mention of that has me sweating all over.
Yeah.
All right. So, interesting example there, of course. But what else? What other examples other than...
Once you understand the concept of anti-fragile and you start looking around, you will see examples each and everywhere, right?
Okay.
Like I said, in evolution, we just talked about immune system and biology, but it applies even to entire tribes and cultures, right?
Right.
Now imagine there is one population which is exposed to lots of shocks, lots of small skirmishes with their neighbors, small battles, and so on. Whereas another set of tribes are like completely peaceful. For 300 years, they have not had any war, they have not had famines, they have not had any problems.
Instantly thinking of two specific countries, aren't we?
But think about it. When suddenly an unexpected disaster strikes, or suddenly a colonial power from far away comes, which tribe is going to survive?
The one that has had practice with war and battles?
Exactly. So in fact, if you read the book Guns, Germs and Steel, then Jared Diamond makes the argument that the reason Europe was able to just so easily take over all of South and North America is because European countries spent centuries fighting each other and becoming good at fighting, whereas the North and South American huge populations,
Civilizations,
huge kingdoms, but they just didn't have that much practice with fighting, and that's why. So Europe was anti-fragile and these guys were just robust.
Any world leaders watching this video, please do not take this as an invitation or a justification for starting wars. It is not a justification for starting wars, please. We've had enough of that.
Yes.
Right.
But just talking about world leaders, I have another interesting example, right? That if you, I mean, a lot of people, okay, really want there to be a benign dictatorship in their country because they're very frustrated with democracy, where the politicians never do the right thing. They just pander to the masses, and there is like, you know, anything, if a leader is trying to do something good, the opposition attacks her, even if just 3 months ago they were supporting that thing, and there is gridlock and nothing ever gets done. And then you see the example of Singapore and you're like, I want that, right? So authoritarian regimes, dictatorships move fast, they make quick decisions, and often, you know, when the decisions are good, they do so much better than other countries. They are more efficient.
Correct.
Right? But when you look back at something quite complex, like a war, what happens is that the democracies where everybody is like just, you know, it's all messy, it is anti-fragile. Whereas a dictatorship is fragile. It is like, you know, efficient and optimized and focused, and then one bad decision takes them in the wrong direction and the whole thing collapses, right? In the last 100 years, whenever there's been a war between a democracy and an authoritarian regime, the democracy has won. What happens is that initially the democracy does badly, right? Because, I mean, they can't agree and they can't even decide how many troops to send, and the opposition is yelling at them and all that. But slowly over time, what happens is that sooner or later the authoritarian regime makes a mistake and then collapses, whereas the democracy ultimately gets its act together and just gets through the whole thing, right? Same thing happened in World War II. See how it went.
Same thing is happening even now, maybe? I don't know. As of this video, there is a war going on in the world, and his point seems to be absolutely bang on in terms of that war as well. Russia and Ukraine. Interesting. So,
And similarly, I mean, dictatorship versus democracy, or communism versus capitalism, right? In capitalism, all kinds of companies are there, and they're each one trying their own thing and different thing, and they're often going in opposite directions, right? Whereas in communism, the whole point was that the government would decide for the entire country what is the right thing to do and what is the right thing to produce and what are the right people to do the production, and it would be more efficient. But what you see, one thing you have to start noticing now is that whenever I use the word efficient and optimized, it's actually the wrong thing. It is fragile because a sudden shock comes and the thing can't handle itself. Whereas the mess that is capitalism, with so many companies being created and most of them dying, but each failure you learn something from, and over time only the anti-fragile ones, I mean the whole system as a whole becomes anti-fragile, and can deal with all kinds of adversities.
Right. I partially disagree with his point there. I understand the overall capitalism point that he's trying to make, but within capitalism itself, there is a lot of fragility which needs to be addressed and which also has its own problems. If we go into that debate now, this episode is never going to end. So we are not going into that debate now.
Yeah.
So we are on slightly different sides on this topic.
In
But
fact,
anyway.
no, I mean, I will admit that capitalism has all kinds of problems, but the fact that there is lots of failures and there are just so many different directions it goes in, that is not necessarily the failure, right?
I concede that. Like I said, I partially agree with you.
You know, when you are thinking just in theory, communism sounds so great. Right?
Oh, no.
But it is not. I think
Yeah.
that's the point I was making. Not that capitalism is like ideal. So
Fair enough. We'll for now agree to disagree on that point. Disagree being air quotes.
Yeah.
Right. So that brings us to the most important question, I think, regarding this principle, this episode. Should everything then be anti-fragile? Like, should we aspire to be anti-fragile in every aspect of our life?
no, I mean, in general, what we would have noticed is that anti-fragile is not efficient, right?
Okay, yeah.
So anti-fragile things will have extra slack built into the system. It will do things a little more slowly. It will take decisions slowly. So, you know, for anything that needs to live for a long time and where you don't know how the future is going to change, that should be anti-fragile, right? For smaller things, short-term things, things where you don't expect any sudden changes. For all of those, use modern principles of efficiency and optimization and so on.
So again, the best of both worlds in this case applies.
Always.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I realize that if you built in an anti-fragility into the system, like you said, there'll be a lot more slack. There'll be a lot more space for things to happen, and a lot of capitalist economies would suddenly realize that their input costs are inflated. So that would I don't know how that would mesh with capitalism, but I guess it's another interesting debate for us to have in a future episode or in another episode.
Yeah. And these ideas came from a book, Antifragile, by Nassim Taleb. It's a good book to read, not necessary to read the whole book. You just read the first 2-3 chapters. You will still get an important idea which can change how you think about lots of aspects of your life.
Nice. So that is Antifragile and that is Antifragility with two very fragile people. My name is Shrikant. This is Naveen.
Thank you for watching till the end. If you liked this episode, check out these others. You might like them also. And please share with your friends. I'm sure they will also like these. Thank you.